Welcome to the Combot Collective.
Yes, sir. Oh, it's not. Okay, there we go. Now it's done. Hello. Yes, that is correct. Robot fighting time indeed. This is Robot Combat Tonight with our right episode here presented by the Combot Collective. Bring everything you want to know from the world of Robot Combat, from the heavyweight class to the fleaweight class, from Battlebots to the live circuit. And I am your host, as always, here at TCC, Sterling Brown, here as we're here to talk about all the 8 of these fantastic Battlebots round of 16 fights, along with 3 standard news topics we have to kick off the episode. One about Proving Grounds, one about the live scene, one about the UK. These are some very interesting developments that you may have missed. We are recording this one not so live this week, had a very busy weekend. As of this recording right now, it is May 23rd, 2023. As I mentioned, we are about half a week separated from the round of 16 in the Battlebots 2022 World Championship 7 tournament. All 4 of our top seeds are still present. I believe Riptide is our lowest seed, still standing in the tournament. We have a couple of rematches in the top 8, but we'll get to that here in a second. We got to get to our housekeeping, smaller topics here. First, of course, at Robot Combat Tonight. But, of course, before we get there, this is the Combot Collective. If you like what you see in this video, please give this channel a like and a subscription. And be sure to follow our Instagram and our Facebook in the description below, along with considering joining our Discord server. That's where we usually record these Robot Combat Tonight episodes live. If you want to get our fresh takes right when we say them, that's the place to check out. And we are sponsored, as always, by robotsareinmylife.com. They are the merchandise provider for numerous teams in Battlebots and Norwalk Havoc. Norwalk Havoc robots such as Blackjack, Wake and Bake, the original 3-pound versions of Shredded Bro, Starchild, the original Ripperoni, Lil Rip, now the current name for that. And of course, Battlebots robots. We are all currently mourning the loss of Shredded Bro, Starchild, and of course, especially Ripperoni from the 2022 Battlebots World Championship 7 season. But if you still want to rep those robots, like I'm repping the Rangers and the Stars right now, be sure to check out the link below, www.robotsareinmylife.com, for the latest t-shirts, tote bags, pins, buttons, poker chips, pizza boxes, you name it. They have merchandise for all sorts of East Coast teams in the world of Robot Combat. So if you want to expand your collection, be sure to check out robotsareinmylife.com. Not really talking about many other robots featured on that website today, unfortunately, but we do have an update from Battlebots Proving Grounds to kick off Robot Combat Tonight today, featuring a robot originally from the UK, a robot which is going to be pretty active this year, and a robot I did not expect to add to the TCC overall rankings. So like we talked about in our recent Robot Combat Tonight episode, Proving Grounds kicked off last week with Disarray's pair of knockouts over Patera Dominator. But now we go from the newbie robots to the alternates from last season, as this week saw Team Danby's 3rd version of Slammo challenging Doom, a robot originally intended for the main Battlebots World Championship 7 field, but had to pull out due to safety issues, allowing Big Dill to pull in. And these 2 robots, Slammo and Doom, almost met at RoboGames this year, as Slammo 3.0 did have to pull out last minute due to family emergency, while Doom was the very final 250-pound entrant added to this year's field as a bit of emergency in its own way. So after these close calls, much anticipation here, this first fight between Doom and Slammo 3.0 saw Doom, much like in a handful of its RoboGames fights, reportedly kill its own weapon right out of the gate. And from here, Slammo was able to bully the hammer saw all around the battle box until the robot was completely knocked out. As of right now, it is unknown if there were any successful lifts or suplexes delivered to the rookie Doom here by Slammo. But we do know the fights would be in favor for Team Danby, and I'm happy for Craig Danby here because apparently his father was present for this one, no less. Very exciting for him. He came all the way from the UK to partake in that fight, but sadly, though, that's where the good news ends for Team Danby because apparently, in Team Danby fashion, while preparing for this Sunday battle for Slammo 3.0, the robot dealt with a broken gearbox. Very heartbreaking. This forced Craig Danby and Team Danby to pull out of the matchup. But luckily for Doom, Alejandro Pena, who miraculously was able to repair this robot in time compared to its challenger, they did have a new robot to fill in for Slammo, an OverKill. That's right, after a discussion with Zaza 2, our new source here at the Combot Collective, or one of them, I should say, we learned that OverKill actually now apparently weighs in at a lean 208 pounds, which means its fights versus competitor robots such as Hydra a few months back are indeed TCC overall ranking legal. And according to Craig Danby himself, who was still present for this fight, this was one of Doom's best matches to date. It seriously did some damage to the legendary Twackbot, ripping up the front wedge and even taking a wheel clean off of OverKill. We should have the picture right here. But once again, after a hard collision with the arena, Doom's weapon would break and the entire robot would flip over. Heartbreaking for Team APT here. Doom went down for a knockout, and this allowed OverKill its first official in the record books victory in over 20 years, as this sadly moved Doom to 0-2 on the weekend. 2 KOs, not the most exciting thing, but we can expect a lot more from Doom, Team APT, Alejandro Pena, inside the battle box this summer. They intend to be very active versus the likes of robots such as Gigabyte, especially in July. I believe we're taking on Horizon next month. That's going to be good. Some very unique challengers there. As we mentioned in our Proving Grounds video, there's not going to be any action this recent weekend of the 20th and 21st. But looking forward to the weekend of the 27th and 28th, it's going to be Banshee versus Texas's own Snakebite. Snakebite has a brand new look since we last saw it in this brand new CAD. Looks wider, a lot more feasible. Of course, I love the Texas flag up top. It has the Crusher and the airbag lifter. Wow, watch out for Banshee and Team Small Robots. Banshee is apparently entering this one with 1.5 times the flipper power compared to what we saw this season and likely what we're going to see during the Golden Bolt tournament. That is definitely something to look forward to. I'm very stoked to see how Banshee does here. But that's all we have for Battlebots Proving Grounds right now. We know some new matchups have been revealed lately, so we're going to be talking about them hopefully in another news video or maybe even Robot Combat tonight down the line. But now let's cross the pond and talk about Extreme Robots. Moving on to the UK here. As of recording now, we are only a few days away from Extreme Robots in Brentwood. 3 events going down on the 27th and 28th of May, and these will be the first 3 events on the 2023 Extreme Robots season calendar, as Team Divinity, Inferno, and Quake are now joined by a brand new team in Team Wolfpack, our big topic for this little news bit right here. And, you know, Team Divinity is going to have your Zadkels and Gabriels. Team Quake's going to have your Tectonics and Maelstroms, maybe after Chops in later of the year. Inferno, of course, is going to have Ignition, Eruption, the brand new Implosion. But Team Wolfpack is essentially going to be taking over any brand new free Asian competitors which aren't assigned to a team. This means robots without brands such as Apex and Ripper early on in last year's season would have been a part of this theoretical Team Wolfpack. Those would be 2 very key additions for the team this year right there. But as of the 15th of May, when this team was announced by Extreme Robots, they would say that within the week, we would hear word about the captain of this Team Wolfpack. But now, 8 days after the announcement, we still have no word about this new captain. So I hope everything's all right, all good at the Extreme Robots HQ. I know things are probably incredibly busy during this final week and build up to Brentwood. But there are certainly some good candidates out there to lead the pack of mercenary robots, ones that we've talked about plenty in the past here at the Combot Collective. We, of course, heard about TR3 and Slammo 3.0 returning to the competition this year. They would be promising candidates. But for me, I think seeing the potentially returning Coyote take over this mysterious underdog roster would be fantastic. It would fit the team theme also. I would like to see that. So that's what we have. Team Wolfpack at Extreme Robots. Very intrigued to see what happens here. And if you're interested to potentially see the team captain of Team Wolfpack before anybody else, ticket links for Extreme Robots Brentwood will be in the video description, or at least the website if you want to check out tickets for other Extreme Robots events this year. But be sure to get your Brentwood tickets before the first fights of the event begin. Let's now go back over to America here. Not as far as Vegas, I would say, but we are going to stick to the Western United States here. So, we're always trying to stay on the radar for these big live events so we can report the results to you guys. And this is a pretty big one right here. One popular event, which is always on the Combot Collective's radar, but always hard to find footage for, is the Angry Vehicle competition happening in the heart of Colorado. This is a very popular event in the middle United States and one which often houses numerous weight classes. But this year, sadly, only featured 3 weight classes, ditching the major 12-pound and 30-pound divisions, which has brought us amazing robots such as Rumham, Beam, and Yahoo in the past. Like I mentioned, Angry Vehicle competition, a bit notorious for not being streamed at all. All of our footage each year primarily comes from YouTube videos from the competitors at this event, and we only have 2 of those for this event such far this year. Very unfortunate, but regardless, we do have some full results which we can report to you all here coming out of Angry Vehicle competition in Colorado. In the ant weight class, first place Spinook, second place Fishin', third place Taco Tuesday. The builder of Taco Tuesday actually has the most footage, I would say, out of everybody for Angry Vehicle competition. So if you want to check out his awesome little taco robot and see what this event was all about, definitely check out his video. In the UK ant weight class, which I believe sits somewhere between the 150 gram and 1 pound division, a bit of an odd class to have in the US, but I digress. First place went to Chakram, second place went to Void, and third place went to Shugi. Not really heard of any of those, but I have heard a few of these robots in the Beetleweight class. Starting with third place here, one of my favorite Beetleweights, Real Genius, turning some heads. Second place, a NHRL finalist already, qualified back in January. I believe he got third at that event. Wicked Twister, solid horizontal spinner. We just saw it compete in Seattle. Another robot we just saw compete in Seattle. First place at this event, Billy. Billy's maybe back on the comeback this year. Super excited to see more of it. That's your top 3 for the 3 classes at Angry Vehicle competition. So there we go. Live event housekeeping is out of the way. We're done with it. Brisk and easy like we usually do here at Robot Combat tonight. May have to milk it a little bit more once we get out of the Battlebot season, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Cap it all off one more time. Battlebots Proving Ground, Slammo defeated Doom, and so did OverKill. Extreme Robots Team Wolfpack confirmed. Still no captain. Try to get tickets to Brentwood if you are in the UK. And, of course, Angry Vehicle competition. 3 classes, 3 champions. Watch out for Billy, Wicked Twister, and Real Genius, the real stars coming out of that event this year in Colorado. Speaking of Colorado, Copperhead, very impressive showing for it this week against Endgame. We'll get there because, yes, time to talk about some Battlebots 2022 World Championship 7, the Sweet 16. Round 32, playoffs, nothing to be ashamed of, but the group of robots that everyone usually remembers from every single season is that Sweet 16, that Elite 16 robot group, which every single robot we saw this week graced us with. Battlebots really, every single year it just gets better and better. The robots get better and better, more robust, more resilient. Last 2 episodes have really been some of the best just straight robot combat episodes we have ever seen in this sport. I absolutely love it. The editing's been great. The production's been great. The post-show's been great. Chris and Kenny have been great. Farouk's been great. Everything's been great except Riptide, but it's all good. The robot itself's pretty damn awesome. We got to admit that. Let's go ahead and get to these fights. A lot of rematches, a lot of bombastic hits. Another robot hit the ceiling. We all know which one it was. Fantastic stuff. No TCC overall ranking update this week, just because the video recording's a little bit later than we usually do it, so we're trying to just get it out and get her done. Expected after we crack our giant nut holder though next week, because those rankings are probably going to stick for a little bit. But let's go ahead and get to that first rematch, though. We talked about at the top of the episode a few rematches this week. But as I mentioned last week, this is a rematch of Robot Combat's greatest cripple fight ever. A battle of the low seeds, all things considered. Black Dragon versus Ribot. And, this was a tough 0-3 start by Ribot to kick off the year, but it bounced back with a regular season win over Scorpius. Got a top 32 upset last week against number 5 seed Quantum. It was a bit of a troubling match for Quantum, but what are you going to do? Black Dragon, meanwhile, had some troubles in a 2-2 regular season, which featured its first ever knockout loss of its career. Very unfortunate, but Black Dragon and Team Warrior bounced back by shocking Ripperoni in the first fight last week. A fantastic fight and a fantastic comeback. Entering this matchup, both of these robots looked incredibly traditional here, almost exactly looking as they did back in 2020. Both robots enlisted a pair of medium-sized forks to go along with their main vertical spinning setup. It was Ribot's 35-pound blade versus Black Dragon's 45-pound drum egg beater disc thingy. And the bigger, lighter weapon somehow came out on top here. Both of these machines would come face-to-face like a pair of Robot Arena 2 AIs, and Black Dragon quickly opened up the offense and control, but Ribot quickly bounced back and took that control over after a few nibbling strikes which threw the Brazilian spinner over. And then things really opened up wide here. A massive strike to Black Dragon, probably the biggest of the match, which rocked the Brazilian and tore off one of Black Dragon's main forks. And then, in typical Black Dragon fashion, Warrior just would not give up at all. But I think something had to have been wrong with the drive of Black Dragon here after that huge 30 seconds in strike from Ribot. I mean, the way it just kept on getting caught in what looked to be a moving forward motion and got stuck face first on the wall a couple of times really made me think that the drive maybe got locked in a forward direction for some portion of the fight, kind of like Behemoth versus Mute in the Heat semifinal of Robot Wars Series 7. If you remember, Behemoth just sort of driving into the wall during that fight. I kind of got that vibe from Black Dragon. I might be wrong, but that's just how it looked from my viewpoint. Black Dragon did try to fight this off, but after a trip to the upper deck screws, it lost half of its drive, along with that last remaining fork. And with half a fight left, Ribot just pretty much had its way with Black Dragon. This was nothing like the 2020 fight. It forced Black Dragon into the driver's side corner where, after a career of no knockouts, Black Dragon has now been knocked out in 2 of its last 3 fights. Black Dragon was knocked out, Team Warrior was shocked, and this massive comeback run by Ribot was still alive, much to Pori's happiness, much to my chagrin, because now I got to hear him brag about it for a week. The fearsome frog has clawed, or hopped? I guess hop is a more accurate word. Its way to an even record now after an 0-3 start with a knockout here in 2 minutes and 14 seconds. As I mentioned, Team Warrior just shocked by this result. But Ribot now moves on to the demon which haunted its past last season in Hydra, hoping Team Waiachi doesn't kill their campaign 2 seasons in a row. As for Black Dragon, though, a sour ending to what started off as a promising year for Team Warrior. After some huge knockouts and a lightweight RoboGames title, they're now 2 knockout losses deep and out of the round of 16, joining General in, the doldrums of unfortunates. Hopefully we can see Black Dragon in the Golden Bolt tournament, but it's always a big question of what's going on when it comes to these round of 16 robots. Speaking of the round of 16, let's keep moving on briskly forward here. As you can kind of see, it looks like the desk has gotten a little bit more spare and a little bit more sparse. Sparse and sparse. That's how you know I'm tired. Barren and sparse. Looking around here, not many robots left on the table. We got a couple of Witch Doctors. We got Sawblaze. All the lockjaws are put up. We got a Copperhead Snake. There's no dissectors on the table either. We got kind of like a champion's corner right here with the Battlebots set up and the Boxers and Tombstone and Bite Force. But overall, not many big candidates left. But here's a big candidate winning this one. It was a battle of the OGs. This was one we were waiting on for a long time. Witch Doctor versus Lockjaw. 2 legendary teams in this sport. 2 of the 4 remaining robots to have not missed a Battlebot season since the reboot in 2015. But somehow, 2 robots which had never met inside the battle box until today. All the way back in 2015 when I was in Fort Worth watching these episodes in a garage using a TV antenna. We saw Lockjaw as a 6-wheel drive control bot, and we saw Witch Doctor as a bit of a semi-cluster bot with no Shreem mech, but a Shaman instead. And both these robots, they have just seriously glowed up and have become elite vertical spinners since then. Lockjaw has tasted the semifinals before and has won a Bounty Hunter and Desperado tournament since, while Witch Doctor has been to 3 championship finals, but still has yet to win the big one. Both of these machines had fantastic 3-1 regular seasons and then delivered strong victories against Bloodsport and Jackpot in very different ways. Lockjaw took some body damage and Witch Doctor busted their weapon motor I should say, in these respective fights, but both robots were said to be ready for this round of 16 matchup. And just like last fight, both of these machines were pretty straightforward in terms of configurations, sans a couple of details. Lockjaw brought back the Sub-Zero Minibot Spitfire, the only drone remaining in Battlebots right now, while Witch Doctor ran its thickest top armor and even kept the front forks from the last 2 fights on for this robot. Maybe they're a bit of a good luck charm. Maybe the Galatleys are more satisfied than we thought with them. I'm still a bit unsold about them, but hey, they did good here. Kenny Florian put the 90-second over and under on under for this fight, and my man was right, damn it. You got to give him credit. After some sick driving by the Galatleys, Witch Doctor had Lockjaw's left front wheel busted in under 10 seconds, and then Mike would quickly top that by rocking Lockjaw, throwing the entire 250-pound robot directly into their drone Spitfire in midair. This was the second time in Spitfire's unfortunate career that Witch Doctor has obliterated it by throwing a part of its parent robot into it. Spitfire, that is, of course. And for Brady Davis's sake, I hope it is the last. But, from here, after killing Spitfire, it was an academic here for the Galatleys and Team Busted Nut Robotics. 2 more strikes and Lockjaw's weapon was dead. And then 1 more gut-wrenching, top-ripping off strike after that, directly into the corner, shot right at the camera, have busted Lockjaw beyond repair. It was a knockout in 56 seconds. Way to call that one, K-Flow. Well under that 90-second mark. Witch Doctor will now go into the Elite 8 with less damage than just about any of its fellow other top 8 contenders, preparing for a never-before-seen challenge and huge. Very interested to see what Witch Doctor does to counter it. Are they going to try to do the configuration game, or are they just going to try to rest on their laurels and do some damage? Only time will tell. Lockjaw, meanwhile, should still be proud. After a 25-year career worst performance in 2021, the legend bounced back, but damn, Donald, maybe it's time to consider some new wheels. I like the 6-wheel Lockjaw setup we saw in 2015, going back to Season 1. Maybe consider something like that, a hybrid of 2015 and 2022 Lockjaw. It's just a thought. I'm an armchair builder here. But that's 2 fights down. Let's go to number 3 here. Killer M's Malice versus Minotaur. An interesting showdown here. The classic number 1 seed versus number 17 seed matchup. Minotaur, of course, this event's number 1 seed, and at 5-0, top 3 TCC rank this year. The machine is as dominant as ever, but now meets a very familiar foe in Ray Billings with Malice? Yes. Not just for one fight with Switchback, Ray Billings is officially sticking around all playoffs for Team Malice. And after we heard word that this was in fact the time when, the week time period when Bunny Soriol had her head injury in the pits, all hands on deck needed to be present for this one, including Ray Billings, especially after all the momentum Malice had already acquired from the last couple of fights against Gruff and Switchback. But Marco Megillario, Daniel Freitas, Junior Soares, and the rest of the Rehobots crew were all too familiar with what Ray Billings brought to the table after countless RoboGames meetings and even one Battlebots main event under these guys' plates with one another. A lot on the line for both these teams here. Rehobots never wants to lose to Ray Billings. Now, before this fight, speaking of Ray Billings, Bunny did speak with him, and along with speaking with, the GOAT of this sport, Paul Ventimiglia, and both of these Battlebots champions said, you need to bring, talking about Minotaur here, you need to bring the biggest weapon you can to fight the Brazilian drum bot, and Bunny did just that. After 5 straight fights with a drumstick, she finally ditched it for the signature, iconic, big red horizontal spinning drum. Very excited to see it here. Minotaur, meanwhile, it's Minotaur. They kept it simple. No small wedges up front, just that nasty 3-tooth drum. And, you know, a big narrative that we've been following here at the Combot Collective has been the story of Malice's weapon reliability. We've discussed it ad nauseum. I mean, you know the drill by now. Looked awful to start the year, but after Robo Games and these 2 most recent Battlebots fights, you have a lot of reason to believe in Malice entering this matchup, and believe many did, including me for a split second, because Malice dominated the opening minute of this one, getting the better of the fight's first 8 exchanges. But, you know, when a nearly unkillable robot like Minotaur finds its groove, that groove rarely leaves. Minotaur then clapped back before the minute ended with a huge strike to Malice, which threw the horizontal spinning drum bot across the arena, giving Daniel enough time to reset and take control after Malice's big red weapon shut down right as the fight's 2nd minute began. Old demons kicking up in the worst possible time. From here, Minotaur began to show off some control by pinning Malice, showing the camera and everyone around the world watching on TV just how damaged that big red Malice weapon was. And then after the pin, let go, and it looked like Minotaur had also taken a bit of weapon damage, but still had a little pop, enough to slowly but surely take back damage, aggression, and control before the 3 minutes were up. It was a full 3-minute fight, so it really did feel like a 2-minute thrill ride. Non-stop action by both parties as both robots' drive worked perfectly all fights, credit to them. But only Minotaur's weapon would barely survive until the very end of this 3-minute showdown. It will be a unanimous judge's decision for Minotaur, who still has yet to miss an Elite 8 after 6 reboot Battlebots seasons. Fantastic driving as always by Daniel Freitas, and Riobot's standard reliability helps the team force a comeback. Minotaur, our number 1 seed, is now our last remaining international combatant in the 2022 season, but now they'll have to fight Sawblaze in a 2021 rematch. More on that later, but shout outs to Malice real quick. Their weapon went complete again, but after their best Battlebots season yet, an impressive Destructathon so far this year, and a top 3 finish at Robo Games, Team Malice has a hell of a future up ahead. Watch out for it at the Golden Bolt tournament. And, you know, if you're a new team, watch out for maybe facing it at Proving Grounds. I'd be scared to draw Malice in a practice fight. Let's go ahead and jump to the unofficial midway major here. We were talking about Snake's success a while ago, Copperhead versus Endgame, an exciting, never-before-seen round 16 fight between 2 teams who have been this far before, but perhaps a matchup even more exciting for us here at the Combot Collective. Both of these robots sit at 20 points with a shared number 11 position on our TCC overall rankings. Our winner here would easily find itself in the thick of the TCC top 10, while the loser may not see a top 10 positioning all season. Our candidates are New Zealand's Endgame and Colorado's Copperhead, 2 robots which have been nearly perfect at this point in the season, with both of these robots tearing their way through a 4-1 record at this point, with both of these robots' sole losses also coming from Ripperoni via a knockout after a critical driving mistake from the more experienced driver. Luckily for Jack Barker and Luke Quinn, Ripperoni's out of the oven and out of the tournament. It was now a straightforward road to the round of 8 for both of these machines, a round both of these teams just missed out on last season after a round of 16 losses. After a solid hype-up video, both of these squads rolled out with their machines, starting with Copperhead, who outside the joke forks, only present for its title intro, was pretty much using the same configuration we've seen in every single fight. 2 big forks and an even bigger drum. Meanwhile, for OES Robotics, no jokes here. That traditional ASIM disc for Endgame alongside a wall of piano keys, 12 in all, plus 2 middling forks that also ain't no joke. Now, in my opinion, this was probably the most spectacular fight this week. After an absolutely torrid start by the 2020 Battlebots Champion, where Endgame punted Copperhead with 3 massive strikes, all of which made the snake fly a little bit like that, the tables would turn in the results only veteran fans of this sport would anticipate. Yep, after these 3 strikes, only one robot's weapon was working, and it might not be the one you expect. Endgame's weapon, after less than 30 seconds into the fight, was dead. Nothing happening in that weapon at all, while Copperhead, after these 3 strikes, was just still marching forward at 100% capacity, didn't look damaged at all. And Jesus, from here it certainly looked like a nature documentary. A snake with its prey. After a lethal dose of anti-spinner venom, Copperhead would spend the remaining 2 minutes and 30 seconds picking away at endgame like surgery. The snake would rip off every single one of these 14 piano key wedges and forks on endgame, and then it ripped off the 2 plows which held the whole thing together. Just a crazy performance, a sterling performance, I dare say, by Copperhead, a robot which we just had not seen much of this season due to it having so many fights which ended in just under a minute. Here, though, Endgame showed some serious resilience, and it gave us some time to watch this beautiful drum bot in action. Endgame made it through the full 3 minutes, but just barely, because in that last 10-second window, when the forks and wedges were already clean off the Kiwi killer, Copperhead then forced Endgame to, as we say in the world of robot combat, do the thing. Propped Endgame face first on its busted weapon and left the New Zealand robot, oh yes, robotics, pride and joy, dead in the water, just as time was up. Copperhead went on to win a unanimous judges decision in a dominant bounce-back win here, taking it to Endgame in a way we have not seen since Minotaur versus Endgame in last year's round of 16. Chris Rose brought it up during Road to the Giant Nut. Maybe drums are the kryptonite for Endgame? Regardless, if there is one silver lining for OES Robotics here, that remix still works. Made it the full 3 minutes despite all the punishment. Unfortunately, doesn't do much when you're stuck on your face. Caustic Creations is now in the Elite 8 for the first time since 2016. First time with this brand new captain. OES Robotics, meanwhile, falls in the round of 16 for the second straight year, but best of luck to them in the Golden Bolt tournament. 4 fights down, we're halfway there. It's another rematch. Let's get to it. Sawblaze versus Monsoon. MIT's last standing robot versus Europe's last standing robot. And like we mentioned last week, Sawblaze has already exercised one demon of its past with a win over Seems Reasonable Robotics. But now it must reach into the pits of 2018 to kill off this malevolent storm force. All the way back during that 2018 round of 16, Sawblaze and Monsoon last met inside the battle box. Both these robots looked wildly different then, with Sawblaze being exclusively an overhead saw robot, shades of SOB, and Team Monsoon still trying to figure things out with their recently rebranded and renamed Tauron Mach 3 2 Monsoon. Now, gotta be honest, I haven't gone back to watch this one, but I do remember thinking Sawblaze was the winner of the fight at the time. But as replays from this episode showed us, there were a few critical driving errors by Jameson Go, which cost Sawblaze in the long run during that fight. But those driving errors are a lot less likely from Jameson in the year 2022, especially after all that experience at NHRL. And both of these robots themselves were wildly different from their 2018 counterparts as well. Monsoon is now an absolute brick. We've seen what it can do inside both the Extreme Robots Arena and the Battle Box. More reliable than ever, and Sawblaze has since overtaken SOB as the greatest overhead blade of all time, with now a vicious hammer saw as its main weapon, plus that beautiful flamethrower. Monsoon had momentum on its side for this one after that massive upset over the number 9 seed Cobalt in the last round, that round of 32. Showed up looking just like it did then for this one. Those 4 fork wedges, 2 on the top, 2 on the front, plus that signature Monsoon blade. But the team did add a little bit of extra armor to the top and bottom in preparation for Sawblaze. And G3 Robotics, meanwhile, much similar. Not much changing with the robot, but there is a little bit of an addition here. They added a pair of eyelashes, as Jameson Go called them, much similar to what we saw them use versus Scorpius. 2 large UHMW panels set up high to protect Sawblaze from Monsoon's weapon reach. Probably the best weapon reach left in the tournament for vertical spinners. But let's talk about the fight itself here. And I'd say outside of one mistake early in the fight, around 10 seconds in when Sawblaze wheelied up into the spinner of Monsoon, this was damn near a perfect outing for the hammer saw. After some patience post Monsoon impact, Sawblaze would take full control of the British vertical spinner, landing 3 vicious hammer saw strikes across 5 attempts to Monsoon. Sawblaze, just like it did for Blip, would give Tom Brewster a full tour of the battle box while administering these 3 strikes, taking the Britbot to the upper deck, the kill saw slots, the arena bumpers, that was a rare appearance, and even taking Monsoon weapon first into the neck of the pulverizer, killing Monsoon's weapon, and more impressively damaging the pulverizer with over half a fight to go. But then, after being weaponless, Monsoon's season ended just the same way it started, with Tom Brewster's killing machine doing the thing. No weapon meant Monsoon could get stuck directly on its face, and unlike Endgame, there was still plenty of time left on the clock. In the same way Black Dragon did it to kick off the season, Sawblaze would win here in a dominant knockout over Monsoon in 2 minutes and 9 seconds. Almost took some tire damage similar to that 2018 matchup, but Monsoon just missed a strike. Watch the replay to see that. G3 Robotics have now exercised 2 demons, but now Sawblaze moves on to a challenge it has toppled before in Minotaur. Minotaur, though, now better than ever, not coming fresh off a hiatus. We'll have to see how it goes for them. Big shout-outs, though, to Aaron from G3 Robotics, an NHRL veteran. You might remember Tale of 3 Hams from last year. He helped with that robot. I love seeing the emotion and happiness from even teams who have been here many times before in the past. Just shows how much Battlebots means to these people. As for Monsoon and Team Toron here, they were the last standing UK and European robot. Who could have predicted that when we kicked this thing off? I don't know if Extreme Robots watches these RCT episodes, but I gotta say, if there is one robot deserving an opportunity at that Extreme Robots World title belt right now, it's Monsoon. I mean, I know Eruption doesn't like to play with the spinners. I know Michael Oates isn't about all that. But when a robot is deserving, and a champion's got to be willing to take on all comers. So, you know, to quote the wise words of Dave Bautista, give me what I want. I got to see Monsoon versus Eruption. It will be great. We'd all love it. We'd all benefit from it. But now, let's go to another rematch here. One from another. Hydra versus Whiplash. From a bit more of a recent time period, the 2020 World Championship Top 8, where we saw 2 red-hot robots at the time in Whiplash and then number 1 seed Hydra go flipper to lifter in a spot for the semifinals that year. This one will be a split decision victory for Whiplash, but in Jake Ewert's own words, he believed Hydra lost that fight in the final 10 seconds. So there was a lot of frustration and a lot of vengeance on the mind here for Jake Ewert, Team Waiachi, and Hydra, who has put together arguably the best season of Hydra's career here so far at Battlebots. Only loss this season came to the defending Battlebots champion Tantrum, no shame there, and it's already broke the Battlebots single fight flip record versus Gruff. Became the first robot to throw an opponent into the ceiling versus Death Roll last week. Only robot to score an out of the arena this year versus OverKill at the Structathon. It's been a crazy year for Jake Ewert. Whiplash, meanwhile, had a story a bit similar to Ribbot, I would say. We saw the tough 0-2 start and the bounce back 2-0 finish, but I'd say there was still a lot up in the air after the very odd ending to that fight versus Beta last week. There were just too many question marks for me to really know how I felt about Whiplash entering this fight. Talking about the fight, though, there's been a lot of consistency in configuration as we get late into the tournaments we've seen at this episode. Same case here. Hydra brought out the usual piano key wedgelets while Whiplash ran that same 3-prong setup we saw used versus Beta last week. And now that 2020 Whiplash Hydra fight was a close one, but this one, it certainly didn't feel too close. Let's get the big stat out of the way here for you guys. 4 flips in 7 attempts for Hydra. You know, they weren't the moonshots like we saw versus Death Roll last week or versus free shipping earlier on in the season, but they did disorient Whiplash big time and forced some hard landings onto the weapon and frame of Whiplash, something that it has just not been able to withstand like it has in years past as we've seen this season. Within just over 30 seconds elapsed in this contest, Whiplash had already began to show drive issues, and shortly after that really started to do some metal shit by ripping off a part of its own armor which allowed it one solid backhand strike to the top of Hydra. But that last flip by Hydra would do whiplash in. Big direct flip up in the air where it landed hard on its lid, could not self-right. It would be a knockout for Hydra in 1 minute and 35 seconds as Hydra, for the third straight season, finds itself in the Elite 8. You know that's got to make Team Waiachi and Terry Ewert proud. This win finally puts Hydra into the TCC top 10 at number 5, while Whiplash, who had finally forced its way back into the top 20, now falls into the mid-ranks here once more, now positioned at a still respectable number 26 overall. That team, Fast Electro Robotics, could really use some time in the Golden Bolt tournament to get the ranking up. We'll see what they do. Let's get to another fight, though, here. One that was very important to me. Like I mentioned a few weeks ago, Huge was my pick to win this tournament after I did my little bracket filling in this year. So I was fully clinched up for this one. Two fan favorites colliding with Huge versus Mad Catter. And there's a reason why I picked Huge this year. It's been borderline unstoppable this season during World Championship 7. The team had really put in the work across the offseason. Jonathan Schultz brought everyone into his house to work on the robot, and it's paid off. The Battlebots Big Butt is now 5-0 this season, but in my opinion, the story of this fight had to come from the 3-2 Mad Catter side. With Huge comes anti-Huge attachments, and Mad Catter was not going to be any different, coming up with an anti-Huge harpoon named the Huge Poon, one of the greatest configuration names of all time. But while Mad Catter had the Huge Poon plus some pontoon wedges, Huge used their classic UHMW wheels for flexibility plus that classic S-blade for cutting ability and range. It's been Old Faithful for Huge literally since 2018. We saw a picture of Huge in 2018 during the pre-fight videos for this matchup. It's crazy to see how much that robot's evolved in such a subtle way over the seasons. Looks so good now. Talking about the fight, though, my issue with just about every single anti-Huge configuration, sans Hydra, is that so many robots focus on implementing it into the fight too much, that sometimes they lose focus of using their main weapon and sometimes lose focus of their signature drive abilities. I don't really know where to rank the Huge Poon in terms of having those flaws. The spark thrower was really cool, and in that first collision, which knocked Huge back, the Huge Poon helped in a way which was not intended by design. Still helped, though. But I mean, outside of that, it was just sort of a longer lifter than usual. I mean, the big hit of the fight for Mad Catter didn't even really involve the Huge Poon. While the fight was still in its opening 30 seconds, the right wheel of Huge took a massive gash taken out of it by Mad Catter's vertical spinning blade. One of the largest we've seen a vertical spinning weapon do to Huge. That's something to worry about maybe in the future with other big spinners like Riptide and Witch Doctor on deck. But thankfully, this didn't deter Jonathan Schultz. Huge's mobility was not hindered greatly, and that weapon just kept on taking chunks out of Mad Catter, starting with one of them wedge pontoons, and then the rear panel of Mad Catter, and then Mad Catter's weapon belt. That killed the weapon. And then the Huge Poon itself. That went flying across the arena. I just felt for San Antonio College here. No matter what Calvin Eba did and his world-class driving tried to do here, he just could not stop Huge, even with the Huge Poon, as weird and wacky as it was. Huge did lose some significant weapon power during the fight's latter half, mainly after it took off the Huge Poon. But Mad Catter just was not able to muster up the proper control nor aggression to turn this fight over on its head. Huge would end up taking this one on a unanimous judge's decision, and that moved Huge on, and this kept my bracket very much alive. But more importantly, for the first time ever, Team Huge has finally gotten past the round of 16. Huge will appear in the final Battlebots episode of the season for the very first time in its career, and Jonathan Schultz and co 100% deserve it. Mad Catter, meanwhile, I cannot help to think that this is certainly not the last we have seen of this robot this year. It placed second at Robo Games, looked very decent there, made top 16 for the first time in its career this year, and I would not be surprised to see it appear at Proving Grounds or even the Golden Bolt tournament. A lot of these top 16 robots I can really see partaking in it. Only a few will. Very intrigued to see how that goes. But oh boy, here we go again. Main event. These damn dudes and their gnarly robot just keep getting away with it, huh? Talking about Riptide versus Hypershock here. I mean, at least the crew seemed to show a better amount of class this week, Team Riptide. I mean, probably not before after a long talking to from the production team, but regardless, I guess they showed a teens bit more class. This was an interesting one on paper, Riptide versus Hypershock here. The robot, which was our number one TCC number one overall ranked robot entering this season, in Hypershock, taking on the number one TCC overall ranked machine right now as it stands by quite a bit, Riptide. These two crews cannot be greater polar opposites, despite the respect shared with one another seen after the fight. It's no secret, we've tried to stay unbiased for it for the longest time possible, but shit, man. Riptide has drawn the ire of just about everyone inside this sport, while Hypershock, another one of those 4 robots to not miss a reboot season, may be the most popular heavyweight in the sport today. Both of these robots are some of the most destructive in the game. Hypershock, the defending most destructive award winner, and much like many others, have brought their usual setup to the dance for this episode, this round of 16 draw. Riptide and Hypershock both had their main long forks plus their heaviest weapon on arsenal for this fight. And just like many of these massive vertical spinner versus massive vertical spinner fights, this one was pretty much decided in just one hit. And unfortunately, that big hit, came off of Will Bales doing one of the goofiest driving mistakes I've seen this year. As just seconds into this fight, Will Bales, the guy who once won Driver of the Year back in 2016, just full-on Tokyo drifts Akira style, takes the side of Hypershock directly into that vicious weapon of Riptide, wheels first. And, this wasn't the worst hit of the fight. I was being a little dramatic there, I will say, but it did pretty much decide the pace here. It flips Hypershock over, and from here, it just got worse and worse for the Miami robot. One hard strike to the side, and then Riptide spikes Hypershock into the fucking ceiling. And not like last week when Death Roll clipped the truss, so Hydra technically got the honors for being the first. Hypershock took out a goddamn stage lights. I mean, other things happened in this fight. Like, Hypershock lost its front wheels, but nobody remembers that shit after the admittedly phenomenal strike by Riptide, sending Hypershock into the goddamn ceiling. It was just a perfect storm with both of these weapons hitting in perfect harmony, going, just like that. Boom! Arguably one of the craziest hits in Battlebots history, as much as I hate to say it. It was a knockout victory by a Riptide, deservedly so, who advances into the top 8 for its second straight season since debuting, and now must take on the proven to be indestructible Copperhead. I don't think Copperhead's going to be able to be so lucky than it was against Endgame. We'll have to see how it goes. Riptide's just so good, man. It's a shame there's nothing else to like about this robot outside of the robot itself. Oh, we'll have to see how it goes. As for Hypershock, fights like this, fights like Copperhead and Endgame versus Ripperoni prove that you just cannot make mistakes in these vert-on-vert showdowns. No sweaty palms, boys. It's the playoffs, and you got to focus. And hopefully we can see, Will Bales garner a little bit more of that focus during a Golden Bolt run this year. I would certainly love to see it. We'll just have to see how it goes. But there we go. 8 fights up, 8 fights down. A little bit of a quicker rundown than we usually have here at the Combot Collective for these RCT episodes. Maybe it has to do with me drinking an entire Red Bull before we recorded. Hopefully I wasn't speaking too fast, kind of like that fucking chipmunk and hoodwinked. But it's all good. I digress. We covered the fights concisely, and you got all the good, tasty bits from it. Just some fantastic stuff. Really one of the best episodes in Battlebots' recent memory. They didn't try leaning too much on Riptide drama. I'll give the slightest morsel of credit, in fact, the Team Break 32 for trying to show a little bit more class, even though I think the damage is done. We kind of know what their real selves are. But, looking at these top 8 matchups before we go here, Witch Doctor versus Huge, that's a first-time matchup. ABC fan favorite versus Discovery era fan favorite. Riptide, of course, is going to be taking on Copperhead. 2 robots which seem indestructible, have very destructive weapons. We'll have to see how that goes. Sawblaze, of course, a rematch with the 2021 Battlebots kickoff against Minotaur. You know that Team RealBots had to have been thinking about this fight quite a bit. I know that both of these teams were competing at NHRL during last year as well. I don't know if they met any during that time. I think RealBots was mainly just fighting Bots FC during it. And then in the other corner, Hydra versus Riptide, another rematch there. 2 rematches on the left side. That's very exciting. Riptide, we know now it's going to be using the vertical spinner instead of the undercutter. They also have a lot of little forks on the front of the bot, very similar to what they have versus Quantum. If I have to go with it here, I'm just going to say what I said on the bracket. By the way, my bracket, I predicted all 8 of the robots perfectly. All the Elite 8 predicted them perfectly. I have only 4 incorrect marks in my bracket, and I am very proud of that. Probably my best bracket I had so far. But yeah, I have a semifinals of Sawblaze versus Hydra, Riptide versus Huge. I think Huge is going to knock out Riptide. I think Hydra is going to get another judge's decision win over Sawblaze. And then, I don't know, I guess Hydra is going to try that vertical spinner. I don't think it's going to work out. I think Huge is going to beat it. It's going to rip it apart. And they're going to take home the giant nut. And if they don't use the vertical spinner, I think Huge is going to counter a cow catcher for a second straight fight. I believe in them. I believe in Jonathan Schultz. That's somebody to love right there. But let's go ahead and get you guys out here. This is Robot Combat tonight with a nice and brisk episode. We covered our news topics and we covered everything else. Nice and easy here. Very happy with how this one came out. Hopefully it isn't too late. I believe this one should be, if all goes right, airing the morning of the final Battlebots episode. And when we record Robot Combat tonight, yet again, it's pretty much essential for me to get some co-hosts in here so we can talk about the new Battlebots World Champion, whether it be Witch Doctor, whether it be Sawblaze, whether it be Riptide, God, I hope it's not Riptide, or whether it be Huge, you know? Maybe my pick will win the tournament. I would love to see that. I know it's Porinog's pick as well. Maybe we can celebrate, do something because of that. That would be fun. We'll have to see how it goes. But thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Robot Combat tonight, our 8th RCT episode. Very exciting. Lucky number 8. This is their host, as always, here at RCT, Sterling Brown. You can find me on Instagram as SterlingTXTG. And, of course, the Combot Collective, what powers Robot Combat tonight. Expect more news videos, especially ones regarding extreme robots in the coming weeks and months now that Battlebots is slowing down. We got to find something to keep the video stream going along, talking about some smaller events. I'm excited to see what happens in the world of Robot Combat while Battlebots slows down. After Robot Combat tonight, we'll probably take a week hiatus. I'll take Memorial Day week off so I can focus on the house a little bit, do some housekeeping that doesn't involve TCC, and then we'll be right back at it with Robot Combat Tonight episodes every other week until the Golden Bolt season kicks off. So that'll be something to look forward to. TCC, though, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, join the Discord server. That's where we do these Robot Combat Tonight episodes live. It's where all the video upload news goes first. Be sure to join that. We have Robot Combat builders from both the UK and the US sharing their knowledge, sharing their tips, sharing their builds in there, along with some content creators, some fans. A lot of fun stuff to do in there. Trying to chat it up. We're trying to make that place more active. And then, of course, if you like this video, this Robot Combat Tonight episode, please consider subscribing. Please consider following us on YouTube, liking the video, leaving a comment. Who do you think's winning Battlebots today when this video drops? And what are your thoughts on Robot Combat tonight? We're always looking for constructive criticism, but that's going to wrap it up. Please check out Extreme Robots Brentwood tickets. Check out the Structathon tickets. Check out robotsruinmylife.com. This is Robot Combat tonight. Watch the Battlebots finale tonight. Greg Munson needs them views. Discovery needs them views. We love Robot Combat here, and we love talking about it, and we love you guys. We'll see you next week for more Robot Combat tonight, where we talk about our new Battlebots Champion. I can't wait.
This was the Combot Collective. Find us on Instagram and Discord.